So, and that's something that's, that varies from person to person. In my sense, I don't do, I was doing commercial work and paid work for a long time, but I just didn't find any joy in the post-processing part and the, going to Lightroom and editing all of that. So I figured, and obviously, and then while I was shooting, I would be taking hundreds of images per shoot, just because you have to have a few copies of each when you shoot digital, just in case someone blinks or something. But anyways, when you go into post-production, it just lost its fun. It started to feel more like a job than my hobby. So when I started shooting film, I was obsessed immediately, and because yes, the costs were much higher, but it's sort of the surprise that, I don't know, I love the surprise. I love dropping off a roll of film that I can't see my images right up front, but I know I spent a lot of time with composition and metering and all that, and I know it took me X amount of time to make 12 images that, maybe in that same amount of time on digital, I would have taken 200. And I think by focusing on those 12, I just know they're going to turn out better. But it's the 1 week turnaround that really gets me. That, I don't know, I love that waiting game. Sometimes I get anxious, but I don't know. There's just something about it, not knowing, dropping it off, kind of checking out, forgetting about it for a week, going through life, and then getting a call and, hey, come pick up your negatives, and going and seeing that everything that you had, planned on, and that all the time you spent composing those 12 images per roll or 36 images per roll, it was worth it, because those 12 images you have less to sort through. You don't have to go do all the dirty work in Lightroom. It's all done for you. And yeah, I don't know, it's very, I think it makes it well worth it. In more like controlled, like personal, on personal projects, and working with people that I really care about, like family members, like Christmas dinner, for instance. That's a perfect example. I always bring this camera and my 4x5, my large format, and Adam's camera, just because, I don't know, there's something special, and it makes your loved ones feel special when you take the time to pose a portrait, take 5 minutes, and have a conversation, talk, catch up, and know that they know that the film costs money, they know that it's time consuming, but the reaction that they get after seeing you're still using a camera that reminds me, at least my grandmother, of her childhood. There's something really special about that. I don't know, and I think I don't know. I love the reaction that I get out of family members when I do their portraits on medium format or 4x5. It's because you can see it in their eyes. It strikes a note. It'll remind them of when they were kids, or of their parents, and I don't know. I have a couple of photos that I did of my grandma's. It was last Easter, and they were some of the first portraits I did with my 4x5, and I don't know. I kind of explained it a similar instance earlier, but yeah, I just kind of sat down, and it had been at least 1 year since I had seen one of my grandmas, so that was kind of the first time, and sitting down, and I was just while I still had the available light, I wanted to make a photo of her, and I don't know, that was just a really awesome way to be reconnected with a loved one. Is I don't know, I think that especially with the 4x5, it's not intruding at all, and I think it makes people feel like I said, special, like you're taking the time to do this for not only for yourself but for them. And I don't know, I just remember, and I don't know, my grandmas are getting old. My one grandmother in particular, she's at that age where she's starting to kind of lose memory and space out a lot, and she's been showing some dementia symptoms. So I guess it's really important that I do stuff like this right now, while I still have the ability to have these conversations, preserve these memories with her. And I don't know, I think that, yeah, that's one particular instance, because that day that me and her were, when I was making the photograph of her, it seemed all, like it was still there. And, since that day, things have changed a lot, with her health and everything. So I'm really thankful that I'm glad that I captured it that day in particular. I think if I would have waited any longer, it would have been a little bit more difficult to kind of have that, mellow of a mood between us.
What's your favorite camera and format?
It changes, and it also depends, what I'm doing and I guess what mood I'm in. So if I'm going to do personal projects, and when I say personal project, I just mean like one big project, comprehensive, like people, places, things. I like to do it on 35mm, just because one, it's, you can get the most images, best bang for your buck, and 35, that's a solid size. You can enlarge those up pretty nicely, and it's a nice, whatever. I can't remember the format size of it. I always forget millimeter wise. Anyways, and then portraits. I really like the Hasselblad. It's this guy. 6x6 square format. I think that's just my golden format for portraits. And with that lens, the lens that I have on it, it's like perfect like square crop of like people's faces and torso. So I don't know. I've gotten a lot of my best portraits using this camera. And then 4x5 is what I like to use. I whip that out, on special occasions. So when I'm doing 4x5, my goal is just to go out, and it's kind of therapy for me, and go out and just take my time and set up one awesome image instead of going through and trying to take 36 or whatever like good images. I'm trying to, it's just shifting my focus, and sort of my zen is, that's zen for me, is just being under my 4x5 under the hood and doing all the focus. And I don't know, I think that I feel it's much more rewarding to see something, and it's more, 4x5 is more expensive too, so I think it's also worth it in that sense, when you get a good shot back. So some of the photos from two of my favorite trips that I've taken in the last year. This first roll is one of my favorite rolls that I've ever shot. It's shot on black and white, but it looks like it's really has a blue tint to it because it's printed on color paper. But anyways, this is all shot in Tokyo, Japan last summer on my 35mm camera. And this one's one of my favorites, partially because, well, I don't know, I just think that the composition's good. It's just capturing a bunch of people and doing, pretty mundane tasks. And then I just kind of got this guy who, and it was raining really hard, and this guy didn't have an umbrella, but he was wearing a really nice suit. And he was going somewhere. He was doing something for his boss because he seemed to be in a hurry. And this was this very same day that I was learning more about Japanese business culture and how, you can never be late, and, there's no task that's like too like dirty to be done in a suit if your boss asks you to. So I figured that kind of applied to this fella right here, and so he was like storming through the streets of Tokyo.
How do you feel when you look at an image you've taken, say, especially like a loved one or somebody you're close with or yourself? How do you feel about a film image that you look at later after you've shot it? Do you feel some sort of like cathartic experience, or do you feel like an emotional experience?
It really depends on the person and, the context. So, in the case of my grandmother that I talked about earlier, I remember what she was like that day. I remember what she was saying and how sharp she was, and I think it is emotional because people change, things happen over time, and they'll never be the same exact person as they were in that exact moment. And so I always kind of keep memory of like who they were in that exact moment. And I know my grandmother's getting old, and she's starting, like I said, she's starting to show signs of dementia, and I think that, knowing that going forward, it's going to progressively get more emotional every time I view that image, and I know eventually, people pass on, and, I know when that day comes, I'll have these images that I made of her, and, it will be an emotional experience, but it'll be a worthwhile emotional experience, and, I think that not only will I appreciate that, but others will too. Because what I aim at doing when I take intimate portraits of people I love is I try to capture the essence of them. Their personality, their just their what they radiate. And I think I captured that really well with my Yaya, I call her. She's a crazy one. She's a wild card, and you can kind of just I don't know. I don't have a photo on me, but I don't know, you can just kind of tell in the expression on her face, and anyone that knows her will be able to identify that and know what she was. They'll just remember that about her. And I guess that's the thing and that leads me to segues into another point is when these people I make photos of do pass on, or dynamics change in people's lives. People will appreciate you for preserving those memories, and I don't know, a photograph is something that's really, people are sensitive. I shared some of those from Tokyo, but most of the images that are my favorite are not favored by people that look at them, which I think that's kind of funny. It's funny to see like how people perceive what I shoot and what what's appealing to them and what's appealing to me. And it's very different, like 90% of the time. Like the photos that I think are really, really, really good and I'm absolutely head over heels for, and I take pride in, are usually not the ones that get like the greatest response from people viewing them. And I also think that's kind of cool, because I don't think it's again, it is art. Not everyone, when you look at, well, I guess I'll use Jackson Pollock as an example, because it's very, I guess, there's no like one way to interpret work like his. So that's kind of how I view photography. Is there are a million ways to, maybe not a million, but many ways to interpret an image, and that's kind of my goal, is to see different ways people can interpret my images.